Commander Jake Morrison gripped the metal railing of his ship's bridge as he stared at the view screen. 12 massive alien vessels floated in the darkness of space, each one the size of a small city. They had been there for 3 months now, blocking every path that led away from Earth's solar system. The ships were sleek and silver with no visible weapons, but Jake knew they were more dangerous than anything humanity had ever faced. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the lead ship," said Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her station. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panel, trying to clean up the alien signal that crackled through their speakers. Jake nodded and straightened his uniform. "Put it through." The view screen flickered and the image of the alien commander appeared. The creature was tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights. Its eyes were large and completely black, and when it spoke, its voice was cold and mechanical. "Humans of Earth," the alien said, its words translated by the ship's computer. "You have been confined to your solar system for your own good and the good of the galaxy. Your species has shown itself to be too aggressive, too quick to spread across the stars. You will remain here until you can prove you are capable of peace." Jake's jaw tightened. For over a century, humans had been exploring space, building colonies on distant worlds and reaching for the stars. Now these aliens, who called themselves the Vorthek, had decided humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to continue. "We've heard your message before," Jake replied, stepping closer to the screen. "But we're not going to accept it. Humanity has the right to explore the galaxy." The alien's expression didn't change. "Rights are earned, not given. Your species has shown violence in every world you have touched. The Galactic Council has decided. The blockade will remain until you submit to our authority." The transmission ended, leaving Jake staring at the empty screen. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations, but he could feel their anger and frustration. They were all career military, used to action and decisive battles. This waiting, this helplessness, was eating at them. Down on Earth, President Catherine Walsh sat in the Oval Office of the United Nations building, reviewing reports from around the world. The alien blockade wasn't just keeping humans from leaving the solar system. It was slowly destroying Earth's economy. Trade routes to the colonies were cut off, and resources that Earth depended on were no longer available. "Ma'am, the riots in Chicago have gotten worse," said her aide, handing her another report. "The unemployment rate is at 30% and climbing. People are scared." Catherine rubbed her temples. The Vorthak had been clever. They weren't attacking Earth directly, but they were slowly strangling the planet. Without access to the outer colonies, Earth's 12 billion people were trapped on a world that could no longer support them all. "What about the other nations?" she asked. "Are they still supporting the unified response?" "Most of them," the aide replied. "But China and Russia are starting to talk about separate negotiations with the aliens. They think we should just surrender." Catherine stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. Somewhere out there, in facilities hidden around the world, General Marcus Thompson was working on humanity's response to the alien threat. Project ZEUS, they called it. She didn't know all the details, but she knew it was their only hope. In an underground laboratory beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Lisa Patterson worked late into the night, studying the alien technology they had managed to capture. The Vorthak ships used energy shields that seemed impossible to break through. Their weapons could destroy entire fleets without leaving a trace. But Lisa was certain there had to be a weakness. "The energy readings don't make sense," she muttered, adjusting her equipment for the 100th time. "Nothing should be able to generate this much power." Her assistant, Dr. Peter Hayes, looked up from his own work. "Maybe that's the point. Maybe they want us to think they're invincible." Lisa shook her head. "No, this is real, but look at these patterns." She pointed to the data on her screen. "The energy signatures are too clean, too perfect. It's like they're drawing power from somewhere else." Peter moved closer to look at the readings. 0-point energy? Maybe, or something even more advanced. Lisa's eyes were bright with excitement. "If we can figure out how they're doing it, we might be able to do it too." General Thompson walked through the facility, checking on the various research projects. The alien blockade had given humanity a deadline, though they didn't know it yet. Intelligence reports suggested the Vorthek were planning something bigger. The blockade was just the beginning. "How's the weapons development coming?" he asked Dr. Hayes. "We're making progress," Peter replied. "The theoretical framework is sound. We just need to solve the power problem," Thompson nodded. "How long?" 6 months, maybe less if we get lucky. "You've got 3 months," Thompson said. "After that, it might be too late." Back on Jake's ship, the crew was getting restless. They had been patrolling the edge of the solar system for weeks, always watching the alien vessels, never able to do anything about them. The other ships in Earth's fleet were spread thin, trying to maintain some kind of presence while the politicians argued about what to do. "Commander," Amy Rodriguez called out, "we're picking up some kind of energy surge from the lead alien ship." Jake moved to her station. "What kind of surge?" "I'm not sure. It's like they're charging something, but the readings are off the charts." Suddenly, the view screen lit up with an incoming transmission. But this time, it wasn't from the alien commander. It was from Earth. "All fleet commanders, this is General Thompson. You are to begin immediate reconnaissance of the alien blockade ships. Use extreme caution, but we need detailed scans of their technology and capabilities. This is classified Operation Thunder, authorization code 77 Alpha." Jake looked around at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for orders. For the first time in months, they had something to do besides wait. "You heard the general," Jake said. "Amy, plot a course for the nearest alien vessel. Keep us at maximum sensor range, but get us as close as you can without triggering their defenses." "Yes, sir," Amy replied, her fingers flying over the controls as the ship began to move. Jake thought about the message hidden in the general's words. Operation Thunder. He had heard rumors about Project ZEUS, the classified weapons program that some said was humanity's last hope. If the general was ordering reconnaissance now, it meant something was about to happen. The alien ship grew larger on the view screen as they approached. It was even more massive than Jake had imagined, with a hull that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols were carved into its surface, glowing with a faint blue light. "I'm picking up multiple energy sources," Amy reported. "But they're not like anything in our databases. The power output is incredible." Jake watched the alien ship carefully. Somewhere inside that vessel were the answers they needed. The Vorthek thought they had humanity trapped, but they were about to learn that humans had never been good at accepting cages. "Continue the scan," he ordered. "And send everything back to Earth. Let's see what these aliens are really made of." As the USS Meridian continued its dangerous mission, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing at the edge of something huge. The aliens had started this conflict, but humanity was about to finish it. The only question was whether they would be ready in time. 6 months had passed since the Vorthek blockade began, and Earth was dying slowly. In the crowded streets of New York, people stood in long lines for food rations. The alien ships had cut off all trade routes to the outer colonies, and now Earth's 12 billion people were trapped on a world that couldn't feed them all. Dr. Peter Hayes wiped the sweat from his forehead as he worked in the underground laboratory. The facility was hidden 3 miles beneath the Rocky Mountains, so deep that even the most advanced alien sensors couldn't detect it. Around him, dozens of scientists and engineers worked day and night on Project ZEUS, humanity's secret weapon. "The energy calculations are still wrong," Peter muttered, staring at the holographic display floating above his workstation. "We need at least 10 times more power than our reactors can produce." His partner, Dr. Lisa Patterson, looked up from her own work. "What about the alien energy readings we captured?" "Jake's reconnaissance missions have given us plenty of data." Peter nodded and brought up the new information on his screen. Commander Morrison's ship had been making dangerous runs near the alien blockade vessels for weeks, gathering intelligence that no one else could get. The data showed that the Vorthek ships were using some kind of zero-point energy field, drawing power from the fabric of space itself. If we can copy their technology, Peter said, we might be able to make ZEUS work. But we're still missing something important. Meanwhile, Captain Amy Rodriguez was preparing for another stealth mission. Her ship, the USS Shadow, had been modified with experimental cloaking technology that made it nearly invisible to most sensors. The aliens had advanced detection systems, but Amy had found gaps in their scanning patterns. Remember, we only have 30 minutes before they notice the gap in their sensor grid, she told her crew as they prepared to launch. Get in, get the scans, and get out. No heroics. The Shadow slipped quietly away from the main Earth fleet, its cloaking device bending light around the hull. Amy had made this run 17 times before, each time getting a little closer to the alien ships. The intelligence they gathered was helping the scientists back on Earth understand how the Vorthic technology worked on the surface. The situation was getting worse every day. President Catherine Walsh stood before the United Nations Assembly, facing angry representatives from around the world. Many countries were losing faith in the unified Earth government and wanted to surrender to the aliens. The blockade has been in place for 6 months, shouted the representative from Brazil. Our people are starving while we wait for some miracle weapon that might not even work. Catherine raised her hand for silence. I understand your concerns, but we cannot give up now. Humanity has never bowed to tyrants, and we won't start today. But even as she spoke, Catherine knew that public support was crumbling. The aliens had made new demands just that morning. They wanted Earth to surrender all military vessels and accept permanent monitoring stations in every major city. Any attempt to leave the solar system would result in immediate destruction, the Vorthic commander had delivered the message himself, appearing on every screen across the planet. His cold, mechanical voice had echoed in every home and office on Earth. Your resistance is pointless, the alien had said. Submit now, and your species will be allowed to live under our protection. Continue to resist, and you will face the same fate as the Krellin Empire. Catherine had never heard of the Krellin Empire, but intelligence reports suggested they were another species that had been wiped out by the Vorthic. It seemed the aliens' idea of peace involved destroying anyone who disagreed with them. Deep underground, General Marcus Thompson reviewed the progress reports from Project ZEUS. The weapons development was moving faster than expected, but they were still months away from a working prototype. The problem was power. The ZEUS system required enormous amounts of energy to function, more than any reactor on Earth could produce. What about using multiple power sources? Thompson asked the research team during their daily briefing. Dr. Hayes shook his head. We've tried that. The energy needs to be perfectly synchronized or the whole system fails. We need a single source that can handle the load. Thompson studied the technical reports, trying to understand the complex physics involved. He was a soldier. Not a scientist, but he knew enough to recognize a serious problem when he saw one. What if we use the space stations? He asked. They have their own power systems. The room fell silent. Dr. Patterson looked uncomfortable as she answered. The power requirements for ZEUS would drain a station's entire energy grid, including life support. Anyone on board would die, Thompson finished. How many people are we talking about? Depending on the station, anywhere from 50 to 300 crew members. Thompson closed his eyes. The choice was horrible, but it might be the only way to save humanity. How many stations would we need? At least 3 for a single shot, Peter replied quietly. And we'd need time to recharge between shots. On Mars, Colonial Administrator Helen Foster was dealing with her own problems. The Red Planet's colonies had been cut off from Earth for months, and supplies were running low. But Helen had been secretly organizing something the aliens didn't expect. A resistance movement. The supply ships from the asteroid belt are still getting through, she told her inner circle during a private meeting. The Vorthic are focused on Earth. They don't seem to care about the outer colonies. That's good for us, said Mining Foreman Bill Carter. My crews have been stockpiling weapons and supplies. If Earth falls, we'll be ready to fight. Helen nodded. The Mars colonies had always been more independent than Earth liked to admit. Now that independence might be humanity's salvation, back on the Shadow. Amy Rodriguez was making her closest approach yet to the alien command ship. The massive vessel filled her view screen, its dark hull covered with strange symbols that seemed to pulse with their own light. "I'm reading massive energy buildups all across the ship," her sensor officer reported. "Whatever they're doing, it's big." Amy adjusted the ship's position, trying to get better readings without triggering the alien defenses. The Shadow's sensors were working overtime, recording everything they could about the Vorthek technology. "Wait," the sensor officer said suddenly. "I'm picking up something else." There are smaller ships docked inside the main vessel, hundreds of them. Amy's blood ran cold. The aliens weren't just maintaining a blockade. They were preparing for an invasion. "Get us out of here," she ordered, "and send everything back to Earth immediately." The Shadow turned and fled back toward the inner solar system, its cloaking device working overtime to hide them from alien sensors. Amy knew this information would change everything. The Vorthak weren't content to just keep humans trapped. They were planning to wipe out humanity entirely. In the underground laboratory, Dr. Hayes received Amy's transmission and immediately called an emergency meeting. The new intelligence showed that the aliens had been lying about their peaceful intentions. Their ships contained enough firepower to destroy every city on Earth. "We're out of time," he told the assembled scientists. "The aliens are planning an attack, and we're nowhere near ready." General Thompson arrived within the hour, his face grim as he reviewed the new intelligence reports. The Vorthak had given humanity an ultimatum, but they had already decided what they were going to do, regardless of the answer. "How long do we have?" Thompson asked. "Based on the energy readings, they'll be ready to attack within weeks," Peter replied. "Maybe less." Thompson made his decision. "We're moving to emergency protocols. Start preparing the ZEUS prototype for testing and send word to the space stations. We're going to need volunteers." As the meeting broke up, Peter stayed behind to study the alien energy readings one more time. Somewhere in the data was the key to making ZEUS work. He just had to find it before it was too late. The fate of humanity now depended on a weapon that existed only in theory and the bravery of people who were willing to sacrifice everything for their species' survival. The aliens had made their choice, and now humanity would make theirs. The emergency meeting in the underground facility lasted 12 hours. Dr. Peter Hayes had spread out all the technical reports across the main table, showing exactly what Project ZEUS needed to work. The numbers were clear and terrifying. "We need the power equivalent of 3 nuclear reactors running at full capacity," Peter explained to the assembled military leaders. "But it has to be delivered in a single burst lasting less than 10 seconds. General Thompson studied the charts, his face growing darker with each page. "And the only way to get that much power is to drain the life support systems from our space stations?" "That's correct," Dr. Lisa Patterson replied quietly. "The fusion reactors on the stations can be overloaded to produce the energy we need. But once we do that, everyone on board will have maybe 30 minutes of air left." Colonel Steve Bennett, commander of Orbital Station Alpha, had been listening in silence. His station housed 300 people, including scientists, engineers, and their families. Now he stood up and looked directly at Thompson. "General, I volunteer my station for the first test," Bennett said. "My people and I discussed this possibility weeks ago. We're ready." Thompson shook his head. "Steve, you don't understand what you're saying. This isn't like a normal military mission. There's no coming back from this." "I understand perfectly," Bennett replied. "My crew understands too. We'd rather die fighting than live as slaves to the aliens." The room fell silent. Everyone knew that Bennett's decision would save humanity, but it would also mean the deaths of 300 innocent people. Dr. Hayes looked at the faces around the table and saw his own horror reflected in their eyes. "There has to be another way," he said desperately. "Maybe we can evacuate the stations first or find a different power source. We've been over this 100 times, Patterson replied. "The evacuation ships would be detected by the aliens, and we don't have any other power sources capable of running ZEUS." Meanwhile, President Catherine Walsh was dealing with a crisis of her own. The world's major nations were demanding answers about the secret weapons project. China had threatened to withdraw from the unified Earth government, and Russia was already negotiating separately with the aliens. "Ma'am, we have riots in 12 major cities," her aide reported. "The people want to know what we're doing to end the blockade." Catherine looked out her window at the protesters gathered outside the UN building. Signs demanding surrender too. The aliens were mixed with others calling for war. Humanity was tearing itself apart while the real enemy waited in space. "Get me a secure line to General Thompson," she ordered. "It's time to make a decision." The call came through to the underground facility just as the technical team was preparing the ZEUS prototype for its first test. Thompson took the call in his private office, away from the scientists and engineers. "General, I need to know if this weapon will work," Catherine said. "The government is falling apart. If we don't act soon, there won't be anything left to save." Thompson looked through the glass wall at the ZEUS prototype. The weapon was 10 feet tall and covered in cables and cooling systems. It looked more like a piece of laboratory equipment than humanity's ultimate weapon. "The theory is sound," he replied, "but we won't know for sure until we test it. And that test is going to cost us 300 lives. How many lives will we lose if the aliens attack?" Catherine asked. Thompson knew the answer. Intelligence reports showed that the Vorthak had weapons capable of destroying entire continents. If they attacked, billions would die. "I'll give the order," he said quietly, on Orbital Station Alpha. Colonel Bennett called his crew together in the main assembly hall. The station had been their home for 2 years, and many of the crew members had brought their families. Now Bennett had to tell them that their home was about to become their tomb. "You all know about the alien blockade," he began. "What you don't know is that Earth has developed a weapon that can break through their defenses. But this weapon needs more power than any reactor on Earth can provide," the crowd murmured nervously. Bennett's wife Sarah sat in the front row, holding their 10-year-old daughter. She had known this moment would come. "Our station's reactor can provide the power needed," Bennett continued. "But using it this way will drain all our life support systems. We'll have maybe 30 minutes of air left." A young engineer named Tom raised his hand. "Colonel, are you saying we're all going to die?" Bennett nodded slowly. "That's exactly what I'm saying. But our deaths will give humanity a chance to fight back. The choice is yours. Anyone who wants to leave can take the emergency shuttle to Mars." The crew talked quietly among themselves. Families hugged each other, and some people cried. But when Bennett called for a vote, the result was unanimous. All 300 crew members chose to stay. "Then it's decided," Bennett said. "We'll begin the power transfer in 6 hours. Use that time to say goodbye to your families on Earth." Back on Earth, Captain Amy Rodriguez was preparing for another reconnaissance mission. The intelligence they had gathered showed that the aliens were almost ready to attack. Their ships had been moving into new positions, and energy readings suggested they were charging their weapons. "We need to know exactly when they're planning to strike," General Thompson told her during the mission briefing. "The ZEUS test has to happen before they attack, or it won't matter." Amy nodded and headed for her ship. The Shadow had been upgraded with new sensors that could detect the aliens' quantum communications. If they could intercept the attack order, they might have enough warning to prepare. Dr. Hayes was making final adjustments to the ZEUS prototype when he received word that the test was approved. His hands shook as he entered the firing sequence into the computer. In a few hours, 300 people would die to power his weapon. "Are you sure this will work?" Dr. Patterson asked as she helped him with the final preparations. "The math is correct," Hayes replied. "But we're dealing with forces we don't fully understand. The alien technology is so advanced that we're basically guessing about some aspects. And if we're wrong?" Hayes looked at the prototype weapon, thinking about Colonel Bennett and his crew. "If we're wrong, then 300 good people will die for nothing." The hours passed quickly. On Orbital Station Alpha, the crew made their final preparations. Some wrote letters to families on Earth, Others simply sat quietly, holding their loved ones close. Colonel Bennett spent the time with his wife and daughter, trying to make every moment count. "Daddy, are we really going to die?" his daughter asked. Bennett knelt down and looked into her eyes. "Yes, sweetheart, but we're going to die as heroes. Because of what we're doing, other children will be able to live free." At exactly 1400 hours, the power transfer began. The station's reactor was pushed far beyond its normal limits, channeling massive amounts of energy toward Earth. The lights flickered and dimmed as the life support systems began to fail on Earth. The ZEUS prototype came to life. Energy coursed through its systems, building to levels that had never been achieved before. The weapon hummed with power, its metal surfaces glowing with heat. "Power levels at 90%, Dr. Hayes reported. 95%. 100%. The ZEUS weapon fired. A beam of pure energy lanced out from the underground facility, striking a test asteroid in the belt between Mars and Jupiter. The asteroid, which had been the size of a city block, simply vanished. Not destroyed, not broken apart, but completely erased from existence. "My God," Patterson whispered. It actually worked, but the celebration was short-lived. On orbital. Station Alpha, the life support systems had failed completely. Colonel Bennett and his crew had 30 minutes of air left, and there was no way to save them. "This is Station Alpha," Bennett's voice crackled over the radio. "ZEUS test successful. We're proud to have served humanity. Tell our families we died free." The transmission ended, leaving the underground facility in silence. The weapon worked, but the price had been higher than anyone had imagined. 300 people had just given their lives to prove that humanity could fight back. Dr. Hayes stared at the ZEUS prototype, now cooling down after its successful test. The weapon could break the alien blockade, but it would require more sacrifices, like the one they had just witnessed. The question was whether humanity had the courage to pay that price. The ZEUS weapon had worked perfectly, but the celebration in the underground facility was short-lived. Within hours of the successful test, the alien blockade ships began moving into attack positions. The Vorthak had detected the energy surge from the weapon and knew that humanity was no longer defenseless. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Meridian, watching the enemy fleet reposition itself. His ship had been equipped with the first combat-ready ZEUS system, a smaller version of the prototype that had been tested. The weapon was mounted on the ship's main gun deck, protected by thick armor and surrounded by cooling systems. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the alien command ship," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported from her station. Jake nodded grimly. "Put it through." The Vorthak commander appeared on the view screen, his silver skin seeming to glow with anger. When he spoke, his mechanical voice carried a new tone of threat. "Humans of Earth, you have made a grave mistake. The weapon you have developed will not save you. We have decided to end this blockade in a more permanent way. Your planet will be cleansed of all life within 24 hours. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Jake's crew looked at him, waiting for orders. They all knew what cleansed of all life meant. The aliens were planning to destroy every living thing on Earth. "Get me General Thompson," Jake ordered, "and prepare the ZEUS system for combat." In the underground facility, Dr. Peter Hayes was working frantically to complete more ZEUS weapons. The successful test had proven the technology worked, but building new units was taking too long. They had only 3 combat-ready systems, and the alien fleet consisted of 12 massive ships. "We need at least 6 more weapons to have a chance," he told Dr. Lisa Patterson as they worked on the assembly line. "But we're looking at weeks of construction time." Patterson looked up from her workstation. "What if we modify the existing weapons, make them more powerful?" "That would require even more energy," Hayes replied. "We'd need to drain more stations." The thought made both scientists pause. 300 people had already died to power the first test. Now they were talking about sacrificing thousands more. General Thompson entered the facility and immediately called for a status report. The alien ultimatum had changed everything. Instead of a careful, planned assault, they were now facing a desperate last stand. "How many weapons do we have operational?" he asked. "3 ZEUS systems are ready for combat," Hayes replied, "but we need power sources for each one." "That means 3 more stations." Thompson closed his eyes. The math was brutal but simple. 900 more people would have to die to power the weapons. And even then, they might not have enough firepower to defeat the alien fleet. "Get me a list of volunteers," he ordered, "and prepare the fleet for immediate deployment." On Mars, Helen Foster received the news of the alien ultimatum with grim determination. The outer colonies had been preparing for this moment for months. If Earth fell, they would be humanity's last hope. "How many ships do we have ready?" she asked her military advisor during an emergency meeting. 47 vessels of various sizes, came the reply. "Most are mining ships and cargo haulers, but we've equipped them with whatever weapons we could find." Helen nodded. It wasn't much of a fleet, but it was better than nothing. "Send word to all the outer colonies. If Earth calls for help, we'll be ready." Back on Earth, the call for volunteers had gone out to all the orbital stations. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Station commanders from across the solar system volunteered their crews, knowing it meant certain death. The sacrifice of Colonel Bennett and his people had inspired others to follow their example. Captain Amy Rodriguez was preparing for the most dangerous mission of her career. The Shadow had been equipped with a special ZEUS system designed for stealth attacks. Her job was to get close enough to the alien command ship to deliver a killing blow. "The modified ZEUS system is untested," Dr. Hayes warned her during the final briefing. "We're not sure how the aliens will react to a direct attack on their flagship." Amy checked her equipment one final time. "Then I guess we're about to find out." The Earth fleet began moving toward the alien blockade just as the enemy ships started their own advance. 12 massive Vorthak vessels against humanity's combined fleet of over 200 ships. The humans were outnumbered in terms of firepower, but they had the advantage of desperation. Commander Morrison's ship led the main assault group, with the ZEUS weapon charged and ready. The power for his weapon was being drawn from Orbital Station Beta, where 400 crew members had volunteered to give their lives. Their sacrifice weighed heavily on Morrison's mind as he gave the order to attack. "All ships, this is Meridian. Begin the assault." The human fleet opened fire with conventional weapons, trying to overwhelm the alien shields. Energy beams and missiles streaked across space, but the Vorthak defenses held firm. The alien ships responded with their own weapons, and the first human vessels began to explode. "ZEUS system ready to fire," Morrison's weapons officer reported. "Fire when ready," Morrison ordered. The ZEUS weapon discharged, sending a beam of pure energy toward the nearest alien ship. The beam struck the vessel's shields and punched through like they were made of paper. The alien ship shuddered and began to break apart, its hull splitting open to reveal the dark interior. "Direct hit," the weapons officer shouted. "Enemy ship is destroyed, but the victory was short-lived?" The other alien ships had seen the ZEUS weapon in action and began focusing their attacks on Morrison's ship. The Meridian's shields failed under the concentrated fire, and explosions rocked the vessel. "Hull breach on decks 7 and 8, damage control reported. "We're losing atmosphere." Morrison gripped his command chair as the ship shook around him. "How long until we can fire again?" "The ZEUS system needs 15 minutes to recharge," came the reply. 15 minutes they didn't have. The alien ships were closing in, and the human fleet was taking heavy casualties. Morrison watched as ship after ship exploded under the enemy. Fire. Then the second ZEUS-equipped vessel entered the battle. Captain Rodriguez's stealth ship, the Shadow, appeared suddenly behind the alien formation. Her modified ZEUS system was smaller but more focused, designed to punch through the strongest defenses. "This is Shadow. Beginning attack run on the command ship." Rodriguez guided her ship through the chaos of battle, using the wreckage of destroyed vessels as cover. The alien command ship was the largest of the Vorthak vessels, its hull bristling with weapons and sensors. "ZEUS system charged and ready," her weapons officer reported. "Fire!" The stealth ship's ZEUS weapon struck the command ship directly in its center section. The beam burned through the alien hull, causing massive internal explosions. But the ship was so large that it didn't die immediately. Instead, it began to list to one side, its weapons still firing. "We hurt them," Rodriguez reported over the radio. "But it's still operational." The battle raged on as the third ZEUS-equipped ship joined the fight. But the human fleet was being destroyed faster than they could damage the aliens. Morrison watched helplessly as dozens of ships were reduced to debris. "Sir, we're picking up new contacts," the sensor operator reported. "Ships approaching from the direction of Mars." Morrison looked at the tactical display and felt a surge of hope. The outer colonies had come to help. 47 ships were racing toward the battle, their engines pushed to maximum power. "This is Colonial Fleet Commander Helen Foster," a voice crackled over the radio. "We're here to help finish what you started." The colonial ships might not have ZEUS weapons, but they had something else, the element of surprise. The aliens had focused all their attention on the main Earth fleet and hadn't noticed the approaching reinforcements. Foster's ships hit the alien formation from behind, their weapons targeting the engine sections of the Vorthok vessels. Several alien ships found themselves caught between two forces, unable to defend against attacks from multiple directions. "All ships, concentrate fire on the damaged command ship," Morrison ordered. "If we can take out their leader, the rest might retreat." The combined human fleet focused their attack on the alien flagship. ZEUS beams, missiles, and energy weapons all struck the massive vessel. The ship's hull began to crack and buckle under the assault. Finally, the alien command ship's reactor went critical. The explosion lit up space like a small sun, and the shockwave damaged several nearby Vorthok vessels. "Command ship destroyed," Rodriguez reported. "The aliens are falling back." But the victory had come at a terrible cost. Over half the human fleet had been destroyed, and thousands of people were dead or missing. The alien blockade was broken, but humanity had paid a price that would be remembered for generations. Morrison looked at the tactical display, watching the remaining alien ships retreat toward the edge of the solar system. The immediate threat was over, but he knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy now knew that humanity could fight back, and the aliens would return with a larger fleet. "All ships begin rescue operations," he ordered. "And send word to Earth. The blockade is broken, but we need to prepare for what comes next." The battle for Earth's freedom was not over. 3 alien ships remained at the edge of the solar system, their hulls damaged but their weapons still functional. Commander Jake Morrison knew that as long as even one Vorthok vessel survived, humanity would never be truly free. "Sir, the aliens are regrouping near Neptune," reported Lieutenant Rodriguez from her station aboard the USS Meridian. "They're trying to establish a new defensive position." Morrison studied the tactical display. His ship was barely holding together after the previous battle, and most of the human fleet was in similar condition. But they had learned something important during the fighting. The ZEUS weapons could penetrate the alien shields, and the Vorthok weren't as invincible as they pretended to be. "Status report on our ZEUS system," he ordered. "The weapon is operational, but we're running low." "On power," his weapons officer replied. "We can fire maybe 2 more shots before we need to find another energy source." Morrison nodded grimly. They had already drained 4 orbital stations to power their weapons, and over 1,000 people had died to make those shots possible. The thought of sacrificing more lives weighed heavily on his mind. In the underground facility on Earth, Dr. Peter Hayes was pushing the ZEUS technology to its absolute limits. The remaining alien ships had to be destroyed, but the power requirements were enormous. Each shot drained an entire space station, and they were running out of volunteers. "We need to find a way to make the weapons more efficient," he told Dr. Lisa Patterson as they worked on modifications to the ZEUS systems. "At this rate, we'll run out of power sources before we can finish off the aliens." Patterson looked up from her calculations. "What if we combine the remaining power sources? Instead of firing individual shots, we could charge all 3 weapons at once and fire them simultaneously." Hayes considered the idea. That would require coordinating the power drain from 6 different stations. If the timing is off by even a few seconds, the entire system could explode. It's risky, Patterson agreed, but it might be our only chance to end this war. Meanwhile, Captain Amy Rodriguez was preparing for the most dangerous mission of her career. The Shadow had been equipped with a special communication device that could intercept the aliens' quantum transmissions. Intelligence suggested that the surviving Vorthok ships were calling for reinforcements from the Galactic Council. If they succeed in contacting their fleet, General Thompson told her during the mission briefing, we'll be facing hundreds of alien ships instead of just 3. Amy nodded and checked her equipment. How long do we have? Our best estimate is 6 hours before their message reaches the nearest Vorthok base. You need to stop that transmission. The Shadow launched quietly from the main fleet, its cloaking device making it nearly invisible to enemy sensors. Amy had made this type of stealth run dozens of times, but never with stakes this high. The fate of humanity depended on her ability to get close enough to the alien ships to disrupt their communications on Mars. Helen Foster was organizing the colonial fleet for a final assault. Her ships had suffered heavy damage in the previous battle, but the miners and colonists were determined to see the fight through to the end. The Earth fleet is in bad shape, she told her captains during a strategic meeting. If we're going to finish this, we need to hit the aliens hard and fast. Her ships began moving toward the alien position, their engines pushed to maximum power. The colonial fleet might not have ZEUS weapons, but they had something else, the desperate courage of people fighting for their homes, back on Earth. The final preparations were underway. 6 orbital stations had volunteered to provide power for the coordinated ZEUS strike. The station's crews knew they were signing their death warrants, but they also knew that their sacrifice would finally end the alien blockade. Station Commander Carol White stood on the bridge of Orbital Station Gamma, looking out at the stars that had been forbidden to humanity for so long. In a few hours, she and her crew of 200 would be dead, but their deaths would restore humanity's freedom. All stations report ready for power transfer, she announced over the communication system. It's been an honor serving with you. All similar scenes were playing out on 5 other stations throughout the solar system. Men and women who had signed up to explore space and advance human knowledge were now preparing to die as warriors in humanity's greatest battle. Dr. Hayes made the final adjustments to the ZEUS coordination system. The 3 remaining combat ships would fire their weapons simultaneously, creating a combined beam powerful enough to destroy all 3 alien vessels at once. But the timing had to be perfect. ZEUS systems report ready, he announced to the command center. All ships are in position. Commander Morrison received the signal aboard the Meridian. His ship, along with 2 other ZEUS-equipped vessels, had formed a triangle formation around the alien position. The enemy ships were trying to maintain their defensive posture, but they were trapped. This is it, Morrison told his crew. For everyone who died to get us here, for everyone who's about to die to power our weapons, we cannot fail. The power drain began simultaneously across 6 orbital stations. Lights dimmed as fusion reactors were pushed far beyond their safety limits. Life support systems began to fail as every available unit of energy was channeled toward the ZEUS. Weapons. Power at 50%, the weapons officer reported. 70%. 90%. On Station Gamma, Commander White felt the artificial gravity begin to fluctuate as the power drain intensified. The air was already getting thin, and she could see her crew beginning to struggle to breathe. Power transfer complete, she announced. Over the radio, all ZEUS systems are at full charge. Fire when ready. The 3 ZEUS weapons fired as one, their combined beams creating a spear of pure energy that crossed the solar system in seconds. The alien ships tried to maneuver away, but they were caught in the crossfire. The energy beams struck all 3 vessels simultaneously, and the Vorthok ships simply vanished in flashes of brilliant light. Targets destroyed, Morrison reported, his voice filled with exhaustion and relief. All alien ships have been eliminated. But the victory celebration was muted by the knowledge of what it had cost. Over 1,500 people had died to power the ZEUS weapons, and the orbital stations that had provided the energy were now lifeless, Hulks drifting in space. Captain Rodriguez completed her mission just as the final battle ended. The Shadow had successfully disrupted the aliens' quantum communication system, preventing them from calling for reinforcements. The immediate threat was over, but Amy knew that other alien fleets would eventually come looking for the missing Vorthak ships. President Catherine Walsh addressed the world from the United Nations building, her voice carrying across every television and radio on Earth. The streets were filled with people celebrating the end of the blockade, but the celebration was mixed with grief for those who had died. Today, humanity has won its freedom, she announced, but that freedom came at a terrible price. Over 1,500 of our people gave their lives to break the alien blockade. They died as heroes, and their sacrifice will never be forgotten. The aftermath of the battle was both triumphant and sobering. The alien blockade was broken, and human ships could once again travel freely between the stars. But the galaxy now knew that humanity possessed weapons capable of destroying entire fleets. And not everyone would be happy about that knowledge. Dr. Hayes stood in the underground facility, looking at the ZEUS HFY prototype that had started it all. The weapon had saved humanity, but it had also changed them. They were no longer the peaceful explorers who had first ventured into space. The galaxy had forced them to become warriors, and there was no going back. General Thompson received reports from intelligence services across the human colonies. Other alien species were taking notice of humanity's victory over the Vorthak. Some were impressed by human determination, while others saw the ZEUS weapons as a threat that needed to be eliminated. "We've won this battle," Thompson told his staff during a strategy meeting. "But the war for humanity's place in the galaxy is just beginning." Commander Morrison stood on the bridge of the Meridian, looking out at the stars that were once again within humanity's reach. The ship was heading toward the nearest human colony, carrying news of the victory and supplies for the people who had been cut off by the blockade. "Set course for Alpha Centauri," he ordered. "It's time to reconnect with our colonies and prepare for whatever comes next." The blockade was broken, but Morrison knew that humanity's greatest challenges lay ahead. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but humans had proven they would never accept captivity. They had unleashed ZEUS, and the universe would never be the same. As the human fleet dispersed to rebuild and prepare for future threats, one thing was certain: humanity had earned its place among the stars through courage, sacrifice, and the willingness to pay any price for freedom. The aliens had tried to cage them, but they had learned that humans would die before they would bow to tyrants. The stars were calling, and humanity was finally free to answer.